I'm truly unsettled after hearing this story from Daniel. As a parent, the thought of something terrifying watching over your child, something you can only see through a baby monitor, is horrifying. Listen closely. I never considered myself the paranoid type. Sure, I locked the doors at night, double-checked the windows, and kept an eye on the baby monitor, but that's just being responsible, right? Nothing crazy. Nothing obsessive. Emily, my wife, was the same. We were first-time parents, and 6 months into raising Lily, we had settled into a routine. Nights weren't as sleepless anymore, and the constant fear of what if something happens had started to fade. That was before the baby monitor incident. Before the face. It started on a random Tuesday night. I woke up around 2:30 a.m. for no reason at all. Not because of Lily. She was a great sleeper. But just that weird feeling when your body decides you need to be awake. I reached for my phone more out of habit than anything else. The baby monitor app was always open, running in the background. I glanced at it, expecting the usual sight. Lily curled up in her crib, breathing softly, her tiny chest rising and falling. But that's not what I saw. There was someone in the room. At first, my sleepy brain didn't register it. The screen was dim, grainy, just a standard night vision feed. But then my eyes focused. A face. Someone was standing over Lily's crib, staring down at her. I shot up in bed so fast that Emily stirred beside me. "What's wrong?" she mumbled, half asleep. I couldn't answer. My body was already moving. I stormed out of the bedroom, heart pounding, sprinting the short distance to the nursery. My hands fumbled with the door handle, and I practically shoved the door open. The room was empty. Lily was there, lying peacefully in her crib, exactly as she should be. The mobile above her swayed slightly from my rushed entrance, casting soft shadows across the walls. But no one else was there. I spun around, checking every corner, every inch of the room. The closet door was shut. The windows were locked from the inside. There was no possible way anyone could have been there. And yet I saw them. Emily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Daniel, what the hell are you doing?" "There was someone in here," I said, my voice shaky. She blinked, trying to wake up fully. "What?" "The monitor. There was a face. Someone was standing over her crib." Emily's expression flickered between concern and annoyance. "Dan, there's no one here." I gestured toward my phone, still clutched in my hand. "I saw it." She sighed and walked over, taking the phone from me. "Let's check the footage." The baby monitor had a playback function, motion-activated recordings that saved every movement in the room. I opened the app, scrolling back to the moment I'd seen the figure. The recording showed Lily, sleeping soundly. Nothing else. There was no one in the frame. No shadow, no movement, nothing. I stared at the screen in disbelief. "No, that's not right." I saw it, Emily. She handed my phone back gently, touching my arm. Maybe it was a glitch. It wasn't a glitch. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw. Emily exhaled, giving me a small, tired smile. "You're exhausted. Maybe your brain played tricks on you." I wanted to argue, but what could I say? There was no evidence. Just my word against an empty screen. "Yeah," I muttered finally, though I didn't believe it. "Maybe." She nodded, kissed my cheek, and guided me back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying the image in my mind. The way the face had looked, pale, unfocused, like the camera couldn't quite capture the details. The way it had stood so still, just staring. And the worst part, I had the strongest feeling that whoever it was knew I was watching. I spent the whole next day trying to convince myself I imagined it. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe the baby monitor glitched. Maybe my brain just turned a shadow into something more. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Emily didn't bring it up again, and I didn't either. I could tell she thought I'd overreacted, and maybe she was right. So I let it go, or at least I tried to. That night, I hesitated before checking the monitor. I told myself I wouldn't, that I'd just sleep. But at around 2 a.m., my body woke up on its own again. A tight feeling in my chest, like my instincts were nudging me. I reached for my phone before I could stop myself. The screen loaded, and my stomach dropped. The face was back, but this time, it was closer. I could see more of it now, though not enough. The image was wrong, just slightly blurred in a way that made no sense. The camera had perfect quality, but somehow, the face looked out of focus. It was at the foot of Lily's crib, hunched lower, almost as if it was bending over her. I reacted without thinking. I jumped out of bed so fast that I knocked my nightstand, sending my phone tumbling to the floor. Emily groaned, barely awake. Dan? But I was already running. I crashed through the nursery door, expecting, what? A person? Some intruder? I didn't know. The room was empty. Lily was sleeping peacefully, completely undisturbed. The mobile above her swayed just slightly, the only movement in the room. My breath came fast and uneven. I turned in circles, scanning the shadows, checking every inch of the nursery. The closet door was shut, the windows locked. Nothing, just like last night. I forced myself to take a slow breath, then another. I stepped closer to Lily's crib, just to be sure. She was fine, safe. I reached out and gently placed my hand on her chest, feeling the slow, steady rise and fall of her breathing. I didn't imagine this. I couldn't have imagined this. Emily appeared in the doorway again, rubbing her eyes. Daniel, what are you doing? I turned to her, still shaken. The monitor. It was there again. She sighed, walking over, her patience wearing thin. Dan, come on. I'm not making this up. I didn't mean to snap at her, but frustration was creeping in. Emily folded her arms, looking at me like she wasn't sure whether to be worried or annoyed. Then show me. I pulled out my phone, opening the app, scrolling back to the footage. I knew what I saw. It had to be there. But just like last time, the recording showed nothing. Just Lily sleeping. Alone. I stared at the screen, my mind struggling to process it. Emily took a deep breath, softening her tone. Honey, I think you need to get some rest. I wanted to argue, but what could I even say? I had no proof. Yeah, I muttered. Maybe. Emily pulled me back toward our bedroom, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. I knew what I saw, and worst of all, the face had been closer this time. What would happen tomorrow night? The next night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sleep. If this figure, kept appearing, I needed to see it in real time. Not through a delayed monitor feed. Not after it had already disappeared. Emily didn't know. I didn't tell her. She already thought I was losing it, and maybe I was. But I had to be sure. So, after putting Lily to bed as usual, I grabbed a chair from the kitchen and placed it just outside her nursery. I left the door slightly open, just enough to see inside. The baby monitor was still running on my phone, but this time I wasn't relying on it. I sat there, staring into the darkened room, listening to the faint sounds of the house settling, the occasional soft sigh from Lily as she shifted in her crib. Nothing happened. An hour passed, then another. It was around 3 a.m. when I heard it. A lullaby, a soft, slow tune drifting through the nursery. At first, I thought it was my imagination. But no, the melody was real, distant, playing from inside the room. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. We didn't own anything that played music. No toys, no night lights with built-in sound. The only thing that could make noise was a small music box Emily's mother had gifted us. But it was on the shelf, untouched, and it hadn't been wound up in weeks. The lullaby continued, warped and off-key, like an old record playing at the wrong speed. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. Slowly, I reached for my phone and checked the monitor. The screen flickered for half a second, just enough to make my stomach twist. Then the image came back, and the figure was standing at the crib again. Only this time, it wasn't just staring at Lily. It was looking directly at the camera. My breath caught in my throat. It knew I was watching. I shot up from my chair, the scrape of wood against the floor breaking the silence. My heart was slamming so hard in my chest that I felt lightheaded, but I didn't care. I burst into the room. Nothing. Lily stirred slightly from the sudden noise, but she didn't wake up. The music stopped instantly, as if it had never been there at all. The room was freezing, much colder than it should have been. I stood there, frozen myself, listening to the eerie silence. I checked the closet, under the crib, every inch of the nursery, but I already knew I wouldn't find anything. I turned back toward the monitor, still streaming on my phone. The figure was gone, like it had never been there. I took a shaky breath and backed out of the nursery, leaving the door open just a crack. Then, for the first time since this started, I did something I hadn't even thought of before. I turned the baby monitor off, and for the rest of the night, I didn't check it again. But that lullaby, I could still hear it, even after I left the room, even after I forced myself to lie down. It was still playing, soft, distant, somewhere deep inside the house. I didn't tell Emily what happened. Not about the lullaby. Not about the way the figure looked straight into the camera. Not about the freezing air in the nursery. What was I supposed to say? That I was hearing music from nowhere? That our baby monitor was haunted? She already thought I was imagining things. So, I kept it to myself. But that didn't mean I stopped paying attention. I didn't check the monitor the next night. I couldn't bring myself to, but I listened. Every noise, every creak in the house, every shift of the air. At 3 a.m., I woke up again. I didn't know what pulled me from sleep, but my body knew before my mind did. A heavy pressure settled over my chest. That same gut feeling, like I was being watched. I turned my head toward the nursery. The door was still open just a crack. And then I heard it. A soft tap, then another. A rhythmic sound, faint but deliberate, coming from inside Lily's room. I held my breath. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up slowly, heart pounding. It was coming from the crib. I reached for my phone, but my hands were shaking. I turned the monitor back on, the screen flickering to life. At first, everything looked normal. Just Lily, fast asleep. Then, the screen glitched. For half a second, everything pixelated. A static buzz crackled through the speaker. And when the image cleared, the crib was empty. I was out of bed before I even knew what I was doing. Daniel, Emily groaned as I rushed past her. I didn't answer. I ran into the nursery, expecting the worst. But the second I flipped the light on, Lily was there, right in her crib, exactly where she should be. But something was wrong. Her crib, it had moved. It wasn't where we had placed it. The entire thing had shifted, turned completely around so that the head of the crib was now pressed against the opposite wall. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't move it. Emily didn't move it. And Lily, she was only 6 months old. She couldn't have done this. Emily appeared behind me, rubbing her eyes. Damn, what the hell is going on? I turned to her, my pulse still racing. The crib, it moved. She frowned. What? I pointed. It was on the other side of the room. Look at it. She squinted at me, then at the crib, then back at me. It looks fine. What? I felt like I was losing my mind. Emily, it was against that wall. I didn't move it. She sighed heavily. Dan, you've barely been sleeping. Maybe you. I know what I saw. Emily shook her head, stepping past me and leaning over the crib, adjusting Lily's blanket. She's fine. The crib is fine. You're just exhausted. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because even if I wanted to believe her, if I wanted to think I was just overtired, that I was somehow mistaken, there was something else. Something that made my entire body go cold. I didn't just hear the tapping earlier. I felt it, and the way it sounded, it wasn't coming from the crib. It was coming from underneath it. I didn't sleep. Not after that. Emily went back to bed, but I couldn't. I sat in the nursery for hours, staring at Lily's crib, half expecting it to move again right in front of me. But nothing happened. Still, the thought wouldn't leave my head. The tapping. It came from underneath. And now, something else was gnawing at me. Something I should have thought of earlier. Had this happened before? Not just to me, but to anyone else. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. I was going to find out. I started with the house itself. We had lived here for just under 2 years. It wasn't old, wasn't falling apart, just a standard suburban home. But that didn't mean it didn't have a history. I dug through old property records, searching for anything unusual. And after about an hour of searching, I found something. The previous owners only lived here for 8 months. Before them, another family, less than a year. Before that, an elderly woman, and she had been here a long time. I felt a strange chill crawl up my spine. Why were people leaving so quickly? I kept digging, found an old article buried in the local paper archives. Nothing major, just a small mention of a woman named Margaret Holloway. And that's when I saw it. A single line buried in the article, barely noticeable. Holloway's grandson, an infant at the time, passed away suddenly while under her care in the family home. My stomach turned. I stared at the sentence, reading it over and over. An infant. In this house. In Lily's room. Suddenly, I wasn't just scared, I felt sick. I slammed the laptop shut, rubbing my face with both hands. Could this be connected? The lullaby. The face. The crib moving. I didn't want to think about it, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. Something was in this house, and it had been here long before us. I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. When Emily woke up, I told her everything. The lullaby, the tapping, the crib moving. I even told her about Margaret Holloway and what happened in this house. I expected her to shut me down again, to tell me I was just tired, that I was imagining things. But this time she didn't. She just sat there, silent. Then, after a long pause, she said something that made my stomach drop. I heard the lullaby too. I stared at her. When? Last night, she said quietly. I thought I was dreaming, but I don't know. It felt real. A cold shiver ran through me. Emily wasn't the type to scare easily. She was logical, always looking for explanations. But now, she looked genuinely afraid. We're leaving, I said. She nodded. No hesitation. No argument. We packed our bags that morning. The plan was simple. Stay at a hotel for a few nights, figure out what to do next. Maybe even sell the house. I didn't care. I just wanted out. But the house wasn't done with us yet. That night, I stayed in Lily's room one last time. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to face it. Maybe I wanted proof. So, I set up the baby monitor again. But this time, I also set up my phone to record. Not just the monitor, but the actual room. If something happened, I'd have real evidence. I sat in the corner of the nursery, watching the screen. Nothing. The minutes dragged on. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., the monitor glitched. The image flickered. A crackling sound buzzed through the speaker. And then, through the static, I saw it. The figure. Right behind me. My whole body locked up. It was standing in the room. Not on the monitor. Not on the screen. It was right behind me. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands went ice cold. My breath stuck in my throat. Slowly, so slowly, I turned my head. There was nothing there. But when I looked back at the monitor, it was closer. I stopped breathing. It was right in front of the camera, like it was staring into me. Then, the screen glitched again. For half a second, I saw something else. Not the figure, not the crib, a reflection, my own reflection. And behind me, the face, not on the camera, not in the monitor, in the reflection of the crib's glass railing. It was inside the crib. And then, Lily woke up screaming. Lily's scream shattered the silence. I lunged forward, grabbing her from the crib without thinking. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my phone. The monitor was still on. The screen flickered, static buzzing in my ears. The face was gone, but the reflection, the crib's glass railing, was still distorted, like something had just been there. Emily burst into the room, panic in her eyes. What happened? What's wrong? I turned to her, clutching Lily against my chest. We're leaving. Right now. Emily didn't argue. She didn't ask questions. She must have seen the look on my face, because she just nodded. We didn't pack. We didn't grab anything except our phones, wallets, and car keys. I didn't care about the rest. I just wanted to get out. We drove in silence, speeding through empty streets until we reached a hotel on the other side of town. Emily booked a room while I sat in the car, still holding Lily, still trying to catch my breath. I refused to check the baby monitor. I didn't even turn my phone over. I didn't want to see it. Didn't want to know if it was still watching. We never went back to that house. Not really. We hired movers to pack our things while we stayed at the hotel. I told them to leave everything from Lily's nursery behind. I didn't want anything from that room. Emily didn't either. We sold the house within a month. We didn't tell the buyers anything. Maybe we should have. Maybe we were just desperate to be rid of it. But one thing still haunts me. A week after we left, I got a notification on my phone from the baby monitor app. I hadn't deleted it yet. I don't know why. Maybe I forgot. Maybe some part of me needed proof that I wasn't crazy. But that morning, when I woke up and checked my notifications, the app had sent an alert. Motion detected. I felt my stomach drop. We weren't in the house anymore. No one was. But something had triggered the camera. My hands were sweating. My whole body was screaming, "Don't open it." But I did. The app loaded. A black screen. Then, a single frame. A still image. The nursery. And the crib was empty. I don't mean no bedding. No blankets. I mean gone. The crib was no longer in the room. Like it had never been there at all. I deleted the app that second. We never spoke about it again. And I never checked the baby monitor again. Not for Lily. Not for our next child. Not ever.